Hi, everyone. My name is Marie Fallon. I'm the Executive Director for the Pflugerville Education Foundation. And welcome to this grant workshop that I hope will help you with the preparation of your upcoming innovative grants, but really any type of grant that you might consider applying for. I'm going to share a little bit about the foundation, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the innovative grant process, and we're going to talk about some basics of grant writing. This grant webinar is not filmed in a professional studio, so I hope you'll pardon any of the background noise that you may hear. But anyway, let's get started. So a little bit about the foundation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we're separate from the district, but we were established to support the district. We have a 25-member board that governs our organization. Our funding comes primarily from individuals and businesses and through our fundraising strategies and events. We give money to the district through campus and teacher grants, professional development, scholarships, student scholarships, and special district grants in partnership with others. Our activities are governed by approved bylaws, our vision and our mission, and our strategic plan. And speaking of our vision and our mission, the Pflugerville Education Foundation vision is that through community involvement and support, students reach their full potential, teachers have supplemental resources, and administrators can provide exemplary leadership. To achieve that vision, we will sustain great schools in our community by closing the gaps, investing in innovation, and building the future for PFISD students. So now let's talk a little bit about grant writing basics to help you kind of get an idea of some tips and things that I've picked up over the last 20 or so years in writing grants. Some of this may be helpful to you, not only for the innovative grant process, but for other grants that you may decide to apply for. So basically, a grant is not rocket science. I know it sounds intimidating, but you've done this type of writing before. You're basically telling the where, the why, the what, when, how, and who, and you're telling it in a compelling way that aligns with the foundation, mission, and vision that you are applying for funds from. So here are a few basics that I've picked up. You definitely want to get organized. So download the proposal and the grant application and the guidelines. Start a grant binder, whether it's electronic or whether it's a physical hard binder. I'm old school. I like to have a grant binder that I can touch and feel and put papers into, but it will help you stay organized. Read the application very carefully. Understand the criteria. Use your highlighter, highlight keywords in the application, refer back to them when you're preparing your responses. Sometimes you get stumped and you're not really sure what to write next. Refer back to the criteria and to the application questions and just really focus in on what it is that the funder is asking for. Know the deadlines and the timelines, and I would say plan to submit your grant at least a day ahead of time. There are numerous times that I can tell you where I'm under the gun and almost missed deadlines because my copier broke down and I needed to make 15 copies. So definitely plan ahead. Again, stay organized and try to submit your grant at least a day before the deadline. If you have a team that's going to be involved in helping you write parts of this grant, get that team together as soon as possible and make sure that everybody understands the guidelines. If information is needed from other sources in the innovative grant process, for example, you might need tech approval, you might need operation and maintenance approval, you might need principal approval. Make sure that you request those things as soon as possible before you even start writing. That will help you in the end. So it's always important to know your funder and the funding guidelines and to make sure that you're clear how you are helping them as well solve a problem that their foundation is out to solve or to provide funding or make an impact in a particular area of society or a particular demographic. You know, make sure that that you know what their funding strategies are, what are their priorities, who are they aiming to support, you know, what changes do they want to make, is there a particular geographic area to focus on, Who's received the funding in the past? A lot of times you can find this information on the website. You can certainly find it on our website. Understand why the funder is submitting this request for proposal or RFP. What is the purpose of this particular funding? And once you know those things, it is your job to show that you align with their requirements, that your proposal aligns with their requirements and their intentions. So write your narrative as if the reviewer, and oftentimes they don't, knows nothing about your organization or your project. This is a competitive process. They're going to read a lot of proposals. Write a compelling story through your grant that documents the importance of your project, from the need statement to the goal statement to the activities and the costs. Don't make the reviewers search for answers in your proposal. They have a lot of proposals to review. Make it easy, use bullet points, address the sub-questions within each question carefully. If they have asked you for something, make sure that you are answering that. Try not to go off in a different direction, and hide the answers within your proposal. So lead with the answers to their questions. Clearly and concisely answer all of their questions. Try not to use jargon. Actually, don't use jargon or acronyms. Connect the dots for the reviewer. So align your goals with your needs statement. Again, use bullet points to help them see clearly what it is you're proposing and how you're answering the questions. Consider using some of the content or the language that was in the request for proposal to show that you match their intentions for funding. So, for example, if we're going to use the word innovative a number of times in our request for proposal, or campus improvement plan, or district improvement plan, use some of those words and say, this is how our application is innovative. This is the methodology that's innovative, or this is the approach that's innovative. So it's always a good tip to use some of the language that they've used. And trust me, you'll find that you can match that up. Always ask questions of the foundation officer. In this case, that would be me. So we're here to help. I don't review the grants. I put everything together so that the review committee can review the grants. And I'm here to help you make sure that you have everything you need, that you've answered questions in a way that you feel comfortable with. So, bottom line is, I'm here to help you put the best proposal forward. So let's talk a little bit about the innovative grants. Here's a beautiful picture of one of our recipients, Rolane, received $4,977.36, it looks like. We have approximately $30,000 in innovative funding to give away. The purpose of these grants, so here again, this is where you would pull out your highlighter and think about what it is that we're actually funding. The purpose of the grant is to enhance, promote, and augment classroom instruction in areas that aren't routinely covered by budgetary funds, or they're not eligible for reimbursement from other sources. And we ask that you make that really clear, that you've exhausted funds from the district, or this is for a project that would solve a need or problem. However, this is not a fundable project through the district's resources. So keep that in mind. Projects will enhance student academic performance and support the objectives and goals and initiatives of the campus improvement plans and or the district improvement plans. Eligible proposals. Only PFISD staff can apply. Educational support groups like PTOs and boosters are not eligible to apply. Renewals for previously funded projects are eligible. However, you want to make sure that you have completed the project, that you have submitted an evaluation form, and that you were successful, and you can show that continuation of these funds would be a good investment. So feel free to go ahead and submit grants for renewal. We can't cover personnel or travel costs. And a teacher or group of same teachers may not apply for multiple grants in the same school year. So we have grants up to $2,000 to award to a single individual educator, or if you team up as a group or professional learning community, you can apply for up to $5,000. Submission deadlines: the completed application must be submitted in a Word document via email to our address at pfisd.net by the deadline. So we need an electronic copy of your proposal, but the original hard copy signed packet must also be submitted to our office no later than 4:30 p.m. on March 31st, 2020. Applications submitted after the deadline will not be accepted. Remember, this is a very competitive process, and so we have to use very objective ways to review and to screen the application. So whatever you do, don't miss the deadline, especially if you've worked so hard on your grant application. You don't want to miss the deadline, and I'm speaking from experience. If your grant is technology-based, for example, you're asking for hardware or software, then you have to submit the technology approval form, and that is attached to the RFP or the grant application. Be specific when you're filling that out. Is it iPad minis or is it iPad Airs? Include any applications, cases, charging stations that you need. Submit your quote and your technology approval form to technology department. And you want to do that before March the 6th because they need time to review it. You don't want to wait until the last minute to get a quote or to get an approval. Again, these are things that can cause you to miss your deadline altogether, and you're just working too hard and the projects are too important for you to miss deadlines. So here's a timeline for our process. We let out our request for proposals or our call for grants on February the 3rd. Oops. Grant workshop training is available online as of February the 17th. On March the 6th, your technology form is due. The deadline for this grant is 4:30 p.m. on March 31st. On April 24th, our grant review committee will meet to select the 2020 grant recipients. The Pflugerville Education Foundation Board of Directors will meet for approval of those that have been recommended. On April the 30th, we will go out with our surprise patrol and let everybody know who won a grant, that they won a grant. We will have contracts available, and they will be due back to the foundation by May 31st. Your funding will be available on September the 1st, and then you have September through June to implement your grants, and then a final evaluation report is due back to us by June the 15th. So if you are able to secure a grant, there are some responsibilities that you want to keep in mind. So first of all, you have to have your principal's approval before submitting your grant. Use the awards for the purpose that it was intended. Fully implement the project and submit a final evaluation report to PEF at the completion of the project, but no later than June 15th. Agree to share successful procedures in staff development sessions. Agree to schedule presentations or site evaluations conducted by PEF to measure program effectiveness. Purchases with grant funds will be in accordance with the district policy and procedures. And communicate and include PEF on all activities and publicity related to the grant. So let's talk a little bit about the grant application. So what is an innovative grant and how are we defining innovation? Innovation is defined as new, unique, creative, original, novel, fresh, experimental, groundbreaking. The desired outcome is to awaken and enhance critical and/or creative thinking. So innovation can relate to methodology, approach, evaluation, or process. Here I've taken the review criteria that our review committee uses to grade your proposals. So as you can see at the top, the grant is reviewed by a committee of community volunteers, foundation board, and district staff. We have a rubric that we use, and each proposal is scored in the following areas. And you can receive a score of 1 to 4, 4 being the best for that particular section. So what I've done here is given you what a 4 would look like in each section. So you've got your need, you've got your solution, you've got your goals and objectives, your evaluation, and your budget sustainability. And by the way, this is a real logical way to lay out your proposal and tell your story through your proposal. So for the need to score the highest possible score, you want to be specific with your details. You want to have significant supporting data and research. Please don't add any links into your grant application. The reviewers will not be able to click on links and go and look at research. So anything that you want them to know that supports your need, you must write it in the grant. It's clear and it's specific. The need is clear and specific. This section elaborates and correlates to the district improvement plan and the campus improvement plan. So for example, if there are certain areas of those plans that you would like to address, however you don't have the resources, then you can talk about the need and as it relates to your project and your campus, and talk about how the funding would help address this need. The next section you have would be talking about your solution. So after you've defined a need and you're now working on how you're going to solve that need or address that need, think about writing a section that is clear and there are specific activities. It's obvious that you put some thoughtful planning into how you would implement the grant. It's creative. The materials are utilized with a high degree of creativity. It is engaging, engaging procedures and age population appropriate. So once you've talked about your need and you've talked about briefly what your proposed solution is, then you want to talk about your goals and objectives. So when we look at your goals and objectives, we're going to be looking that they are aligned with the need and the problem statement, also the solution. It represents an urgency of need. It is aligned with the proposed solution and activities. It is clear, specific, measurable, and realistic. So your goals and objectives are basically SMART goals, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Next comes the evaluation. Are there qualitative and quantitative outputs or methods? So qualitative usually refers to outcomes, and quantitative usually refers to outputs, numbers. And so we're looking for something that the outcomes and outputs are directly tied back to your goals and objectives. We have a table that I'll show you in a minute. It's going to help you kind of process that in your mind and then put it on paper. Your evaluation should measure student and progress success. Your evaluation is to be exceptional, contains some creativity or multiple methods of evaluation. That would be considered exceptional. Next, you have your budget and sustainability. So is your budget detailed? Is it clearly connected to your goals and activities? So for example, if you are going to help children focus on a specific activity and it's going to require a reading space with certain chairs and mats and what have you, and it's proven that having that kind of a reading space will increase the outcomes of your program, then you want to make sure that you have all of the supplies that you need detailed in your grant. Is the budget realistic? Is it adequate? So I've seen a lot of times, and I've been in a lot of grant trainings and done grant trainings, where people propose some pretty hefty activities and goals and objectives that when it comes to the budget, they're kind of skimp on the budget a little bit, and it's easy for the reviewer to see, hey, are they really going to be able to achieve all these goals and objectives with this amount of money that they've applied for? If not, are there other funding sources that are going to help this project be successful? Excuse me. So you want to make sure that it is realistic and adequate. Is there sustainability for the project? Is that clear? Is there a plan discussed in your proposal? So these kinds of review criteria are what we're going to be looking at. And I will say a lot of times, if there are review criteria stated in a grant application or an RFP, I'm going to go back and look at what makes the best possible grant, and how I can get the highest possible score, and how are they weighting certain things, and then make sure that I follow that through my grant application. So again, we talked about a grant narrative is really talking about the what, when, where, why, how, and who. So we have made the application a little more streamlined for you. We have 4 narrative questions, and then we have a table for goals and objectives, activities, evaluation, and then we also have a budget form. So for the narrative, let's talk about question number 1, or A. Explain the need for the funding for this project or for the program. Identify the need you wish to address and provide specific data and or research that supports the need. What are the main issues that you're trying to address, and how does this proposal address the issues and the needs? How does the project tie into campus plans or the strategic plan, or again, the campus improvement plans and the district improvement plans? Why is this funding important to your campus, to the district, to the children? And you'll have 750 words maximum. So this will help you really make sure that you are clear, that you're concise. And again, when you're answering this question, go back and think about the things that we identified earlier that make a strong need statement. The second question is a brief question about, it's basically a summary. You might want to wait until you've filled out the goals and objectives tables to come back and fill this section in. So in addition to telling us a little bit about the project, if this is a collaboration, we'd like to know how this collaboration is going to work out. What are the roles and responsibilities of each collaborating partner? So explain how your program and project integrates a creative and unique approach to address the targeted need and lead to higher levels of critical or creative thinking. Please discuss the implementation timeline. So there are 3 things here if you notice. If you're going to collaborate, talk about how that's going to work. Be brief and explain how your project is creative and is unique to addressing the need that you have identified. And third, discuss your timeline. So question number 3, or C there, provide a brief description of your evaluation strategy. Again, for all these sections, you're going to have a little bit more space on the tables. Going back to our grant writing tips, you will have read through the proposal very carefully, and you will have identified that there is a table where you'll have more time and room and space to talk about some of the specifics here. So just keep that in mind. Knowing that these questions have very limited word maximums. So we were talking about providing a brief description of your evaluation strategy. So how are you going to track performance? How will you share your program successes with your peers? Will you write a report about what you experienced and distribute it? How can this benefit more than just the immediate grade level or class that you were implementing the project for? You have very little words, 150 words maximum here, so be very clear and concise about performance measures. And then finally, sustainability. If you're funded and successful, how are you going to continue the program or project in the future? What will be the recurring costs that you need to think about, and how will you fund them? So in the past, I believe somebody asked for a 3D printer, and the grant was enough to cover the 3D printer, but moving forward, there were additional costs for supplies for that 3D printer that really they hadn't thought about. And so the 3D printer was not operational in the subsequent years. So that's not a very good investment of the dollars. You want to show that you can maintain any equipment that you're going to ask for, or maintain the project after the foundation funding is over. So here is the table that I was telling you about. So here you can kind of tie it all together. You have your, what it is you want to do, what do you want to achieve, how are you going to do that, what are going to be the products of your project, your outputs, what's going to be the outcome, the impact of your project, and what are the performance measures that you're going to have to see and prove that you met your goals and your project was successful. So if we look at the goals, and I know as educators, you've seen SMART goals before. So your goals are specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, they're relevant, and they're time-bound. Your activities, you want to describe a list of activities, use bullet points that show what you're going to do. This is a logic model in a lot of ways. What are you going to do that is going to lead to achieving your goal? For outputs, what are the activities that are going to be produced, or the direct tangible products that are going to be produced out of this? A lot of times, but not always, these are going to be quantitative, like how many students are you going to touch, how many sessions will be held, how many courses offered. So these are about numbers. The outcomes, though, are about the impact, about the changes in the level of knowledge or skills, changes in behaviors, changes in attitudes, and or standing for the participants after they have participated in the project. So these can be both short-term and long-term outcomes. And again, this is tied back to your narrative and tied back to your need. If you have a well-defined need and you have a good solution, then you should be able to say, this is what's going to happen when we implement this project. So if we do this, then that will happen. That's how I like to look at it. Performance measures, here you get to talk about what kind of data you're going to collect to measure your outputs and your outcomes. So for example, there just are a number of different things you can do to collect data. You can do surveys, you can do sign-in sheets, you can do observations, self-report, test scores, increases in levels of again, test scores. We had a really great grant that described how the children benefited in terms of reading and passing standardized testing as a result of the project. So be sure and think about how you're going to evaluate this project to show that it has been successful. So let's talk a little bit about the budget. And so the budget is a detail of the cost of the program or project that you're proposing. And you want to show the reviewer exactly what their money is going to pay for, and that it is very much tied to the activities that you're going to be doing, which are going to lead to the goal, which is going to then address the need. So you see, I keep going back to this process of tying it all together and pulling that thread through your grant from need statement to budget and sustainability. So we're going to ask you to provide a detailed budget using the form that's in the application. You have to use district approved vendors, or you have to prove sole source justification. Include all your information and costs, and just as a reminder, we can't pay for salary or travel. What I do, this little light bulb over here on the screen, is a lot of times I will complete the full application, and then I'll go back and I'll look at the budget, and I will see if this budget really tells, the story of what is really needed to make the change that we're hoping to make happen. So, does the budget tell the same story as my narrative? In other words, do the numbers and the words or the work match? To check, read through your narrative. Every time you mention something that a cost might be associated with, and stop and double check that you have that in your budget. So here is our budget form that you're going to see in the application packet. And I want to remind you just some of the information on the bullet points to the right. You want to talk to the accounting office if you have any questions about expenditures or the purchasing process. Funding is not available until September the 1st, so keep that in mind. Provide a detailed explanation of your budget request. District approved bid procedures will help to estimate some of the items that you're looking for, especially in technology, and include specific information for each of the categories in the table here. So let's look at those categories. So across the top, you have the category, and you have the description, and then you have the cost. So we have summarized our categories, which is a little different if you've applied for a grant in the past. We've summarized these so as to make it a little easier. We don't require that you go out and get exact costs and attach quotes and attach costs to the proposal anymore, because things do change indeed. And we just don't need that level of information at this point. So these are the categories. Supplies. So as long as the item is not over $3,500, it can be considered a supply. So these would be project supplies, instructional supplies, equipment under $3,500, curriculum-based supplies, things like that. Contracted services covers printing of specialized customized items like t-shirts or gadgets or mugs or instructional materials, handouts, and any services provided by outside vendors. Travel, again, to say we can't fund travel. Technology is going to be your hardware, like your iPad or your laptop. It's going to include software and applications. If you have an item in this category that is over $3,500, please be sure and check with Jeffrey Leth, the PFISD staff accountant that works with the foundation. His extension is listed there. So have a conversation. Again, that goes back to ask questions. So give yourself enough time to ask those questions and get those responses back. Memberships include teachers associations, professional associations, miscellaneous incentives, awards, food, online trainings, all other items other than supplies. So food is not considered a supply. It's actually considered a miscellaneous item. And then if there is something that does not fit in these categories, then put them in the other section. So again, I'm available for questions and happy to answer what I can. I hope that this webinar has been helpful. I know that scheduling a time to come to a training is often a challenge for our staff, and so we wanted to make it easy for you. But I am happy to come out and do a grant training, but I ask that there are at least 10 participants in the training to make it, the best use of our time. You can call me anytime or email me and ask questions. And good luck, and I look forward to seeing your proposal.